Started then. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Coventry Redevelopment Agency to order. Carrie, would you please take the roll call?
Member Poley?
Here.
Member Boyer?
Here.
Vice Chairman Shula?
Here.
Member Brennan?
Here. And Mr. Pila is excused. Council will be coming in virtually. And I see Sarah up there, so we have GZA who's going to be available tonight as well. Okay. New business. I'd like to welcome Brittany Boyer to the Coventry Redevelopment Agency. We finally have a full staff up here, or full crew up here. I just want to check and make sure that her onboarding is all set, and I know the oath of office you already said was fine. Financial disclosure, cybersecurity, all that kind of fun stuff that we have to do.
Yes.
Okay, so we're in good shape that way. Very good. So, welcome to the mill. Okay. Item B, it's kind of a report on a call with that we had between Redevelopment, GZA, and what? Oh, minutes, sorry. No, somebody's got to keep me on the straight and narrow. Okay, has everybody seen the meeting minutes from our last meeting, 11/19? Okay, any changes, any alterations, anything along those lines? Okay, can I take a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'll be abstaining.
Okay. Now I can go back to things, right? All right. Okay. We had a call this month with emergency evacuation. I'm sorry. I've been up late. Emergency evacuation. Doors to the rear. Go to the left, go to the right, either the parking lot or the front lawn. What else am I missing? Auto order. Okay. That should be it. Now, back to the call with GZA and DEM. This was a preliminary call. I thought it went very well. We got contact people on that. We had some follow-up questions that were sent out to them. One of the things that came up in it that we need to keep into consideration is that before we can start the permitting process with DEM on any projects, we need to have a 30% design plan in place. So we're a ways away from figuring out the permitting of anything. So, Sarah, do you want to follow up with the information that that DEM provided to us about the water quality?
Sure, absolutely. So yes, we had a great call. We have prepared a water quality report highlighting all of the information that we discussed, as well as the resources that were provided by DEM. Bob, would you like me to share that? I know you were also going to provide that to members of the RDA. Do they have that in front of them?
I have sent that out. I believe everybody's gotten that.
Yes.
Okay.
Sarah, maybe just read the executive summary for the benefit. I think that
Sure.
kind of summarizes.
Sure. So, our reporting and our work that we reviewed dates back to 2012, with the exception of a 2010 aquatic vegetation study that DEM did provide to us. So since 2012, Johnson's Pond has been classified as an impaired water body under the Federal Clean Water Act. Since 2014, it has been listed as a Category 5 impaired water body due to mercury in fish tissue, and that requires additional water quality restoration study, also known as a total maximum daily load, or TMDL. Previous studies that have been conducted by DEM have identified atmospheric conditions from out of state as the source of the mercury in state waters and ultimately in fish. And then we, had reviewed all of the cyanobacteria, blue-green algae blooms that DEM had provided us since 2021. A severe algal bloom occurred in 2022. While there hadn't been any advisories or reports in 2023 or 2024, there have been 2 advisory issues in 2025. And given these recurring blooms, Johnson Pond continues to be a priority water body of concern, especially during midsummer to early fall, when water is the most warm and nutrient-rich conditions promote bloom formation. So the frequent and recurring blooms are difficult to manage, and DEM did provide us with some kind of best management practices that homeowners can follow, as well as some policy recommendations that could help, such as adopting and reinforcing nutrient reduction measures, additional shoreline buffers, minimizing of fertilizer use, septic upgrades, and those can help reduce algal blooms. So we do provide all of that in the water quality report. Also based on the research and information provided by DEM, non-native species, as we all know, have been a reoccurring issue at Johnson's Pond as well. The 2010 study that I did just reference identified 3 prevalent invasive species and identified impairments to fish and wildlife. Maple Root Pond and Stump Pond have also been considered impaired, and they have also been included in the water quality report. This study also had identified several methods that can be employed to remove invasive species, but ultimately what the study came out with was that goals and purpose of removing or controlling these species needed to be clearly defined before any measures were implemented. So again, that's just a high-level review. There's very much a lot of detail with respect to list of impairments and water quality. And we'll leave it to the RDA if they would like to post that on the website, if there's additional information that should be included. But it does certainly does discuss a lot of the impairments and issues associated with Johnson's Pond.
Okay, so seeing that you've all had a chance to take at least a brief look at it, any discussion on that?
Did you say it is on the website or is?
No, it's not at this point.
Okay. I would think it makes sense to have this posted to our website so everybody could see it and read it.
Where can we find the DEM recommendations now to see what those recommendations are?
The ones that are in the water quality report?
No, she had said that there was more recommendations regarding the nutrients and the runoff and things like that. They didn't have a list of recommendations in the quality report.
Okay.
We can attach all of the documentation that was used to generate the report. I don't think there are additional recommendations other than what are cited, but Sarah, you can clarify that. You're muted.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. No, these weren't also, hard recommendations. These were suggestions by DEM of ways to reduce. And these are all publicly available documentation on their website. So they provided a list of links, best management practice for homeowners to use, and, certainly can attach those to the water quality report.
So they're not specific to Johnson's Pond. They're just general.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
DEM also does not, they're not treating the pond. That is not in their purview. So they are not going to provide specific recommendations for that.
And part of that, if I may add, is related to past private ownership, which is, delimited sort of, public agency access. So basically the one new part of this is the cyanobacteria, an algal bloom website that they generated in 2025, where they're now doing more regular inspections. But that there's basically been a limitation, I think, extensively here on study of the pond. And we also had a call, and we can discuss this with Pawtuxet River Authority, which was kind of in the same circumstance. And there are additional implications from that call that we have that we believe that are challenging the pond as well, particularly related to nitrogen loading coming from the many septic systems as greater density has occurred around the pond. That has led what at least now is being posited as a reduction in sort of aquatic species in both type and number. And so the quality of fishing, not even related to mercury, which is kind of a global problem, that is potentially tied to sort of reduction of quality of the water. But again, this is based on the available data that we have. You know, probably the broader implication here is for more extensive ecological study of Johnson's Pond and various points of the pond, as well as outer sections of the watershed.
Correct. And also, I'd like to add that follow-up conversations will happen with DEM. They recommended that we speak with not only natural resources, but enforcement as well.
Right.
Yes.
I think I'm just concerned with the amount of impairment that they're saying the pond has and the amount of additional use it's about to take on. I feel like we should have some specific guidelines for this particular situation more than just their general DEM guidelines. I'm not sure why we're asking them for that kind of input if we're just going to get their general guidelines. It seems like a very specific change that's about to happen.
All right. So, Ms. Boyer, I agree with that. Yes, you know, we have a certain charge here, and one is to include and discuss with DEM and identify what they have and what they have not, as well as other like quasi government authorities like the Pawtuxet River Authority, cover the bases, see what the gaps are, see where the evidence leads, and then, you know, the town is going to have to engage potentially in an individual study to develop specific targeted recommendations here. You know, given, as you note, what is increased use of the pond going to do for that? Is it safe for swimming? Are there remedial measures that can be done? And that's really the purposes. The redevelopment plan is not just about identifying additional public access, which is warranted in the ordinance and also related to the taking, but to make sure that the pond then, and now that the town has ownership of the pond and the dam, the issues that come along with that are proper maintenance of the ecology of the pond for specifically public access and use, not only for abutters, but the entire town in general. So yes, you're precisely correct. More study is needed, more targeted recommendations, and a plan for long-term maintenance is warranted, which is one of the reasons why the redevelopment plan is important, because once that redevelopment plan is adopted, then there are funding and financing approaches that can then be triggered to help the town cover such cost over the long run.
So essentially what we have is we have something that has to be included in the plan, you know, for whatever that we're doing. And it's separate from whether or not we're putting a boat ramp in or anything along those lines. You know, we have to be sensitive to the pond itself, you know, and we're bringing in, you know, the Stump Pond and Maple Root Pond in it because those are direct connections.
Okay.
So whatever's in there can flow downstream, and so they have to be considered as well. Whether we have to do anything with them or just, you know, make sure that we acknowledge the fact that that's coming in, that's to be determined.
May I ask what percentage of the way along we are?
With our contract with GZA, we're, I think, around 60%.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yes.
If I recall from the last
And you
report
were,
on
I'm sorry, that we need to be to 30% to hit what point?
if we're starting to look for permits. So if we're looking to put a fishing pier in, that's going to have to be permitted by DEM.
And how far along are we toward?
Not, so we're
That's
still
not part
of this
what we can
plan.
bid in.
Not in the scope of work.
Yeah.
We're doing a plan that's designed. We're going to provide concepts. Those need to be developed afterwards. You know, that's a separate, you know, I think some of the intent here between a redevelopment plan and design plans, which are to be an outcome of this process, a recommendation out of this process, are not properly understood.
So do we need to be 100% of the way through GZA before we start even thinking about permitting?
We have to have a redevelopment plan in place, adopted by the town and approved by the state.
And what is our timeline there? Where do we feel like we are there?
Well, we're hoping to, with the process that we're doing with GZA as far as developing the redevelopment plan, as I said, we're about 60% through.
Do we have
And
a
part
date
of that
at
is
all in mind?
contingent upon the comprehensive plan being updated. That's a wrinkle that has come into this process, but the town is fast tracking that, and we're facilitating that as well, through our discussions with the planning department. Now, I will say this, listen, if the town chooses to in advance get into detailed design process in parallel with this and wants to separately fund that, while we indicate that those are, immediate action items that are being considered and that they're long range, 5, 10, 15-year approaches for the pond, you could certainly proceed and do that. I'm not sure why that's so pressing at this point. The whole purpose of the redevelopment plan process here was to, directly respond, to sort of the court order and to put a plan in place with specific assignments for improvements to the pond. So, but I don't want to say that our process is delimiting the town from, getting, starting to look at various avenues to enhance access immediately. But I think you will find when we discuss this, it's more complicated than simply dropping in a boat ramp. It's there. We went through this quite thoroughly with Bob and with our landscape architects, so it bears discussion before, hopping into 30% design and pulling permits. You have to find a feasible location with associated parking, the proper turnarounds, and so on and so forth to accommodate a boat launch on currently town-owned land, and that is a challenge. And I'm prepared to diagram those issues we have. It's kind of down lower in the process here in the scope, but.
Okay, so to go back to the water quality report, is there any objections to putting that up onto the website along with the additional information as far as the links? So, Sarah and Kevin, if you guys could get that put up there, that would be great.
Yeah, and I just want to add, great job with it because it was incredibly comprehensive. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I have to say DM was wonderful. Really,
Yes.
We had the whole, starting with the director's recommendation, a whole team of folks. And obviously when we're prepared to speak about the realities of enforcement that may be needed, we'll be pulling a call with them probably sometime in January.
Absolutely.
That boat ramp and additional public access all comes with additional responsibilities for both DEM and the town, and that reality needs to be dug into as well.
And I will say that they definitely made it very easy for us to have a quick turnaround and reporting within 2 weeks. So it was a great discussion with them, and we look forward to continuing the discussion with them.
Yeah, we'll get the report uploaded tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. There's also a meeting with planning that unfortunately I was not able to be on, but you both were there. If you want to give a brief summary of what took place in that.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead, Sarah, you can hop in. So we met with Doug, and really 2 parts there. The primary driver of that was to discuss the comprehensive plan, where it's at, the section that we need to review related to ecology and recreational resources, as related to the comp plan. We've already reviewed it. We discussed it with him. We're discussed the approach on that. We also wanted to reinforce the notion that we really want, and we have wanted with whether it's with public works or whether it's parks, to have an open communication, lines of communication, and really demonstrate, given Brittany's testimony before council and council discussion, our follow-up discussion with them, that we're not operating in the dark here, that we're going to coordinate with the town. We're going to help bring the RDA and town planning together, and council. And, we've always wanted that to be the process. And so we have an excellent meeting, an absolute meeting of the mind in terms of, helping in whatever we can to update that document so that it can get through the public process and approvals. And that was, we intend to provide input on the comp plan by early to mid-January to meet his targets for moving it forward.
Okay, any questions on any of that? Okay. Another meeting that was held today, or was another call that was held, was with the Pawtuxet River Authority, which we had this morning. You guys want to give a summary of that? I thought that was
Yeah,
a very good meeting.
previewed a bit of it. Basically, the Pawtuxet River Authority identified their absolute support of the planning process here. Noted they have many of the same concerns, as this is a part of a broader watershed, of which integrates with the hydrology of the Pawtuxet River, and like the vast chain of connecting wetlands and water courses. Being able to evaluate, have us look at this not only in terms of recreational access, but given the discovery that we did in terms of the current known ecological state, they're very concerned about water quality. They're also very interested in public access and supportive of it, and basically indicated they just want to continue to be in the process. They look forward to seeing concepts as we developed, and they very much felt that, and Doug from the Robert from the Pawtuxet Authority also felt that nitrification was a likely candidate for what he's observed. He's been going to the pond for 50 years. He felt that the nitrogen loading coming from septic systems over time has impaired the quality of fishing, and has contributed to potential reduction of the ecological variety of the pond. As well, things like lowering the impoundment and that sort of thing also likely had an impact. And he wanted to make sure that we had consistent procedures for lowering the impoundment during winter, and had common considerations for pesticide use, and other measures to control invasives or other forms of invasive plant life that's present on the water body. So this is the very first discussion, but we very much sort of aligned in what we see as potential impacts of the pond, concerns about balancing increased public access with public safety, which is obviously a major concern that came out of the public meeting, and it's something that we've been very, very understand that need to be balancing thorough public access, quality of public access, with concerns about impacts to abutting properties, and so all of his thoughts are very much in line with all of the considerations that we've had to date.
And I do just want to add, when we had our discussions with DEM, they had pointed to a previous lake management plan that had been prepared by the Johnson's Pond Civic Association. And so when we were on the call with Pawtuxet River Authority, we had asked them about that lake management plan, and they are going to look into that to see if they can provide us with that information.
Right. Any comments, input on any of that? No. Okay. It's been a lot of talk going on. Okay, that brings us down to item F, which is loosely described as next steps. So where are we going from here? One of them is that we had the landscape design team give us an initial report as far as what their first look at this is, as far as what can be put where and such. And if you guys want to push that out or talk about that.
Yeah. Sarah, can you show the matrix of near term?
Sure. I think we can start with that, and that kind of helped us lead to this process. Give me one moment. So this came directly from the previous RDA meeting where it was voted on near-term, midterm, and long-term measures. And basically, this is going to be a tool used for future sites as well. But in here, you can see that we've noted some areas for each of the sites that we have discussed: the dam property behind DPW and Francis Sherman Park. And based on this discussion and this matrix, this has led to these diagram concepts. Kevin, would you like me to start with the dam property itself?
I'll go ahead and go through the diagrams if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. So the first step in any good, planning and planning to design is understanding the constraints and the opportunities versus a potential program. And here, given that matrix, we're looking at areas for a boat launch, potentially swimming, trail connections, additional parking, but primarily the boat ramp was something that we looked at. And we had done a tour with the vice chair and the chair. And, we started looking at properties that were already town owned or already in use in recreational points. And, that included Francis Sherman, that included, the area directly behind DPW, including the dam and associated wetland areas. We looked at Zeke's Bridge, and basically there's not a lot of access that's owned by, these are the 3 access points, and there are very limited town-owned lands. Almost everything is privately owned. There are a few spots. Those are small or not appropriate for enhanced access. So what we did is we sort of decided, okay, what can we program here based on the kind of needs and enhanced public access? So at this location, we were looking first at, the feasibility to develop a boat ramp, and the concerns and considerations here primarily, access is problematic over the trail. There's a large steep drop, even though there's this wooded area right after you come out of the parking area and you go across, and there's some spots down into the water. And then there's sort of 2 parallel trails here. This area is all available and does provide, there's little pocket parks of picnic benches, but kind of ramping over this access and getting the sort of turnaround that's needed is problematic. So we also kind of looked at satellite parking at this location at 2, where there's sort of vehicular storage, and then potentially trying to find conduits down across the walk path down into the water. And that will require some additional topographic study. There are some additional limitations here, however. One, we're going to need to delineate the wetlands here. We also need to look at existing plant and animal communities. One of the things when we did the dam work that was noted is that there's a turtle habitat that's along the shoreline area. How extensive that is, and seasonally where the turtle habitats are at and how they behave is something that would need to be documented in the eyes of DEM in order to provide enhanced access. Also, the other limitation is you cannot have boats, or say a marina, or you really don't want to have a boat launch or swimming in close proximity to the spillway. And that's a standard for any dam location. That there's actually turbidity issues, underwater issues that you can't see on the surface. And even if the spill is very slow, sometimes that can collect from upstream and hit the spillway quickly. And so the idea is you need to delimit an area of kind of risk on that spillway. And there's some additional studies that need to be looked at on how close you can get. But we do believe you can provide some of these locations fairly distant here. So we've identified those sort of limitations, and with knowledge of those limitations, we can kind of outline what the options are, what the cost for those options are, and how, how feasible they are in general. So the other side of this is limitations on vessel size, weight, and that will then constrain the sort of turning radii that's required to be able to sort of back a trailer and a vehicle down with a boat, to the water. But one of the interesting things here in the course of this, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, is there's really, really great opportunity to create something wonderful here in terms of expanded public access and access to the waterfront via trail system that hops over the various connecting outfalls here into South Brook. One is a possibility to spur off and do a series of ponchons or bridges across some of these areas, and to connect in between the two portions of the dam itself proper and the spillway, and then potentially be able to utilize a portion of the dam with proper protections, to access other portions of the adjacent Johnson's Pond community, as well as connect to other little islands. So there's a really great opportunity to create enhancement of this and to extend the walking trail into sort of a scenic nature arboretum type of opportunity. So, and putting a pavilion, an observation area in between these two areas as possible. Fendering boats here and that sort of thing in front of the dam is not recommended just structurally. That is something when we provide sort of a comprehensive report of options and that sort of thing. Initially we had kind of thought about that, but we talked to Chad Cox and he's like, that's really not something that is warranted or desired here, just to protect the dam. So, some of the concerns and considerations, access from an existing trail would need to be assessed from proper terrain, geotechnical considerations, may be limited to the north side of River Channel without bridge installations to connect interior pond property. Public access will require assessment of safety and risk to the public. Access to the dam may be limited. That's, so these areas are in red, because you kind of have to weigh the costs of providing access along the dam, structural shoring, fencing or gating and that sort of thing. And also you have to really observe whether it opens up the risk of people sort of jumping off the dam and that sort of thing, providing access. So all of these enhancements, whether upland enhancements or water access, require, increased consideration of public safety. So are there any questions on here? But I do want to note, we're looking at a lot of different types of things, here, whether it's observation points, walking trails, ramp access. Obviously, non-motorized craft are much easier to sort of provide in here, and we can certainly provide, whether it's paddle boarding or kayaks or canoe locations. That's a much lower lift in terms of motorized vehicles. Obviously, some of the other things are how many slips or parking spaces would we want to provide, limiting licenses so we're not overloading the pond. But looking at a swimming area, additional recreational amenities on the waterfront, on the upland side, and observation points and trail enhancements are all well within and well suited to the area. So I can hop to Francis Sherman if nobody has any questions. And obviously the next step is to take this to more fuller identification of, certain immediate improvements that can be done, identification of hurdles and potential permits, more on-site investigation. Now is actually once the snow clears, or even now, potentially better than the summer when there's a lot of overgrowth and that sort of thing to walk the area and that sort of thing. Okay, so we'll hop to Francis Sherman. So folks that are familiar with this location, this is sort of a little, a very small, sort of rectangular park that has about space for 4 or 5 parking spots. I visited there and walked the length that can be walked. It's quite overgrown, a lot of invasive species. There's basically a number of sort of there's a basic linear trail that goes out to the tip, and then a few sort of spurs off of that. There's about 3, and those are susceptible to flooding. They're quite muddy. So we're talking about putting ponchons, which are basically a wooden low-lying bridge, or potentially a small boardwalk. Each one of these areas is excellent for kayak access. The tip affords the opportunity potentially to put an observation boardwalk for fishing out on the edge as like a capstone improvement to the site. But this is very much sort of, again, all of this is feasible. We don't have complex issues with boat, and I will go into that in terms of actually motorized boat ramp access. But this is more of an enhancement of the park. I don't think this is particularly a great location for fishing. There's some question of whether or not dumping of glass has been done out on the tip. So there's a potential to like rehabilitate that environmental damage that has been done there, or reckon with it one way or another. There's also this other area labeled number 2. So that is actually hard. Initially, when I had looked at that, I thought that was primarily wetland, but that might, initially we had discussed potentially doing a boat launch there. A little bit too shallow in terms of the site, in terms of a ramp and for parking, unless we're able to acquire some additional parking, off site, or enhance the parking location here. And then you might be able to have a back around here. But again, we kind of have to go in and diagram that. I think our landscape architects were, pretty set that was a very difficult fix. But this affords an observation area, picnic tables, and an enhancement or an expansion of Sherman, or Francis Sherman Park. So that's basically, and by the way, this is actually hydrologically connected to Stump Pond, that flows, basically underground via culvert into the water body. And then, so beyond this, there's a couple of additional steps. Looking at Stump Pond, looking at Root, what's the name?
Maple Root Pond.
Maple Root. Those also those need a very enhanced sort of ecological cleanup. There's a lot of invasive species there, but those provide opportunities for access. Stump is quite a bit larger, might provide a significantly better area for sort of motorized vehicle access. Obviously, it's not connected to Johnson's Pond, but looking at just the recreational opportunities, that might afford an opportunity. So the next step here, Sarah did an evaluation of vacant properties that are currently not privately developed. And part of the redevelopment plan is contemplate opportunities to expand public access and potentially acquire some vacant lands that might be able to afford opportunities to expand additional public access and to provide, features like a boat ramp. The other possibility we kind of discussed was at Zeke's Bridge, potentially elevating that bridge to afford an opportunity for a small watercraft to go under the bridge. So there are also some additional considerations as well. But you can see it's not a slam dunk at the dam site to provide immediate boat access. It's certainly not infeasible. Anything is possible, but that's a more involved improvement project that would require to provide boat access there. But
with additional costs associated with that.
So the next steps are really to provide more programmatic analytics and concepts for these, and now that we understand the constraints and the desires, is to go into those details and to basically prepare that background as well as the additional sites, for public discourse at the workshop that's planned upcoming. So I'm open up to questions or comments or follow-up.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I'll just say this is incredibly thorough, and I appreciate it. The visuals help, and this has been a long process, and there's been so much happening behind the scenes that it's nice to see these things on the screen. So it's just very exciting. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and by the next meeting, we're gonna have more diagrams about and literally more conceptual to show you how some of the things would lay out, vignette drawings and that sort of thing that kind of support this vision. Because right now we're kind of like, okay, here's the hurdles, to these, and we have kind of programs. And the other part of this is, again, kind of stepping through long range, but we really obviously were directed and tried to focus on these immediate sort of wins and, moving that along as quickly as possible. And again, maybe that's broken out from the redevelopment process just to get started on certain things. So I appreciate that, Mr. Schuler, and we definitely have a lot of great stuff to come here by the time we have the next meeting and get set up for our public workshop. And the idea behind that, I just wanted to discuss that because how that format is handled. Now we have enough information here on various aspects of the pond, ecology, which is very important in terms of establishing specific findings related to the redevelopment plan, not only blight, where there clearly signs of ecological blight present on the pond that pose challenges to the town in terms of stewarding their efforts beyond the recreational access. And given Ms. Boyer's concern with intensification of use, what does that imply in terms of that ecological condition? So mirroring all these things together and being able to have a discourse with the public and then laying out sort of what the preferred alternatives are and what other options the community would like to have contributed to these, we're very well set up for that next meeting. And obviously that's kind of the discussion is what the RDA thinks is the best time coming into the new year to establish that workshop for us to finish the exhibits and the work that are necessary to prepare for that. So that's kind of the major, and I'm kind of hopping right into it, Bob, next steps. That's one of the important next steps.
So for the second public meeting, this would be the one that we would be using to get public input instead of just the development area, which is what the first one was, the more specific development that's going on with what was just being presented. Dates that we were looking at, short date on it would be at our in place of our January meeting, so it would be end of January. I personally think that's a little tight. And alternatives for that would be, say, mid-February or at our February meeting. And that would be what we're looking at is like using the senior center for that, doing breakout rooms, very much like we did at the high school, except in a hopefully better environment than the high school afforded us. So personally, I'm thinking mid-February to the end of February. I think that would give us a chance to look at a couple of iterations of things to be presented. I'm open to any input on that.
Does that matter if we set that date? And I would suggest we do it in place of our February meeting. So that last week of February, does that give you all enough time, Kevin, to be prepared for that?
I think that's perfect, and it allows for additional internal coordination with stakeholders, with the RDA, back and forth with you guys over the next several weeks as well, to develop all the materials, hear concerns, close loopholes with DEM
And planning.
And planning. So yes, that actually, and Sarah, you weigh in as well. Does that comport with?
Absolutely. I think that's more than feasible.
And that gives us time to submit our draft dates for the year at our next January meeting.
Right.
So then we could put that out there. Yeah.
Put that up. That'll be on there. And the other thing is we have to make sure we have that facility available for that particular date. So we'd have to
And
work around
properly
that.
noticed as well.
Right. Sure.
Who are you considering stakeholders?
So obviously the entire town are stakeholders. Anybody that could potentially use the pond as a publicly open meeting, any quasi-governmental or ecological or recreational ombudsman that are associated with the pond. And again, I don't delimit it to any of that, and looking for, and I mentioned to you, Ms. Boyer, at the public meeting, and I gave you my card and my personal cell number and told you to call me at any time. I'm happy to meet with anybody.
I'm sorry, sir. You asked for you did not give me your information. You asked for my email and said you would reach out, and I didn't hear from you.
And I gave you my card and my phone number.
My second question is, have we set our boundaries in concrete from our first meeting where we decided where things were going to go? Are the boundaries set now 100%? Because my concern is going into our second public meeting without finishing the work from our first public meeting.
Are you talking about the
This
redevelopment
is-
area itself?
Yes.
Okay, the redevelopment, as far as we're concerned, that's set. However, that has not been able to be adopted by the town because of the comprehensive plan issue. Okay, so from our point of view, you know, we're not planning any changes to that redevelopment area that I'm aware of. But is it official and cast in stone? At this point, it's not, because it hasn't gone before the town council.
And my frustration stems from, I feel like what we're hearing at this meeting, while you guys have put a lot of work in, and I do appreciate that, I feel like I'm hearing almost the same information every time I've listened to a meeting. And we're talking about the things that we could have and the things that we could do and how we could have a boat ramp here. And then we have another meeting and we talk about those things again. I would love for the public to have solid steps in place, not the diagram on the website, but some solid steps and some solid dates in place, some deadlines that we can say we're going to have this done by this date and we're going to keep moving forward.
I think we just are discussing that. Right.
I mean, also, what can we just acknowledge that permitting does not just set that time frame right now? There are
That's
still a lot of
irrelevant
limitations.
to this process. So I thought we had just been discussing that timelines and when things get done. I haven't, like, I actually have only, I don't know. I'm not even sure how to respond to that question. So because I mean, maybe you're not familiar with the scope of work, and a lot of this is being pushed beyond, you know, the original intent of the scope of work. So whatever you desire, Ms. Boyer, so tell me what dates you would like. We just discussed a late February date for the next meeting. We discussed.
I'm not talking about the meeting, sir. What I'm talking about is some plans to help the public. A lot of people in the public don't understand this language, okay? And they're not educated in redevelopment. A lot of people are just not. My background is in healthcare. I had to learn a lot of this. So I would like to have some very layman's explanations written out for people to understand we are at this point and by this date we will have these things done, and I don't feel like that's out there clear for everybody.
We spent a good 30 minutes at the public session in very iterative format, and it's also all posted on the website. We're happy to do that and provide that for you. But that was the immense context of that first meeting, what the process was, what the redevelopment.
I was at that first meeting, sir, and it was embarrassing.
Well, I will tell you this, to a person other than you and the reporter that was there, I had personal handshakes from over 100 people saying how much they enjoyed that meeting and looking forward to moving forward in the process. I feel you were an outlier here, that this was not the feeling at all from that meeting. We had state representatives there who personally thanked us for the format and the nature of that meeting. Literally, we had a standing ovation at the end of that meeting. So you
did not. You should speak to some of our council members, sir, and see how they feel.
We actually have it.
Thank you.
A video of this showing this. A video. There's video.
Okay, I think we're getting a little off topic here. You know, and I want to kind of pull us back. There is a process that we're having to follow. Okay, this is governed by state law, and we are following that process. As far as giving a hard date as to when we're going to get a boat ramp in or any of that type of thing, that we are not at a point that we can even project that. Okay.
Again, sir, that's not what I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm asking, maybe you're not understanding what I'm asking.
It's possible.
What I'm asking for is, these are the steps we have completed. This is the next step. And this is the next step. And to make it very clear for the public, I am very involved in the public aspect of this as well. And many people are just not happy with how things are moving because they're not getting any information.
Okay. Do we
Can
not
I-
still have the timeline up on the website?
It is, but to Ms. Boyer's point, we should lead off the meeting with this, where we're at in the process. And I do appreciate that comment, and we will provide that, and we look forward to recommendations for how that can be disseminated. It is on the website. We will try to provide more expressive indications of what has been completed and where we are in the process on the website, and the interim in any way, shape, or form desired. So I'm going to step back and say, Ms. Boyer, you're right. We will provide an iteration before every RDA meeting, and I will provide an agenda here that shows what's been completed and where we're at in the process. Now, some things have been moved around here because the original intent and generally the standard approach for any community-based process is to not gild the lily with a bunch of concepts first and plans. It's to go to the community and solicit their input. And even if that sounds repetitive, that's done on purpose so the community feels like they're involved and that there's a feedback loop. Here, we're going to kind of say, hey, we've done some homework. We researched this, that, and the other. Here are preliminary ideas. We're opening them up for comment. But having said that, you're absolutely right. I will provide you a step-by-step of what's been completed and what's left to complete and an estimated date for completion.
I think we can update the timeline on the website. This is pretty layman on the website of where we are, what has happened, and where we're going. It's pretty clear. So so to your point, I think, yes, if you want to take on the additional lift of maybe preparing some items for us, just so that we have some basic timeline of achievements versus future steps, I think that's certainly helpful to all of us and everybody around. But I would just update that timeline as well, because that's pretty clear.
And we are in the process of developing the redevelopment plan. That is where we stand.
Yeah, there's something like 15 separate finding items required
Per
by
the state statute.
statutory authority, and a lot of those are just they're we'll go over that because that, again, it's specific maps and property ownership stuff, a lot of background information, support of the blight finding, demographics,
land use, connectivity, utilities, and transportation.
And those are just standard documentary features of a redevelopment plan.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Because we're starting to get pushed a little bit here, so I'd like to keep us moving along. The only other things that I have on the agenda is, again, in next steps, what types of things can we get done now that we would have to do no matter what the final redevelopment plan is? I know there's some environmental, Kevin had mentioned wetland delineation, things along those lines. So what I would kind of like to do is have, well, George has actually volunteered to do stuff like this. So what I'd like to do is have you go out and try to identify various things along those lines. What is there that we could put into place, regardless of what the plan is, but for anything that we would have to do that touches the edge of that water?
There's one element in this whole thing. I'm sorry. Thank you. There's one element in this whole thing that I think we're ignoring, and that is everything we talked about is physical. Can we build this? Can we do this? Can we do that? I think there's another issue, what we can do legislatively. And I look at the rules for Tioga Lake and the rules for Johnson's Pond, and it's a tremendous difference there. I'm not suggesting that we need all of the rules that they have at Tioga, but I'm suggesting that looking at the rules for Johnson's Pond and doing some legislating there might help an awful lot. And that's not what you're asking me about, but that's the thing that's I found mostly concerning.
Okay. I think that's something that we do need to kind of take a look at. That kind of leads me into the next thing I want to volunteer somebody for. Brittany, as the new member, you get the things. There's what we're doing is in some ways unique and in some ways not. Other places have had to deal with public access to ponds that are surrounded by private property, things along those lines. This has been suggested, it was suggested at the last public meeting. Senator Lou Reptakis came up at one point and was talking to us about this, or talking to me about it anyway. What I'd like to do is start looking at some of that kind of stuff. There are a lot of issues that somebody else has solved. For example, what, Chris, your boat has a 115 horsepower motor on it, right? Your mom's
My
boat.
mom's boat had,
Yeah.
yeah, I think 115.
Okay. So if we're opening this up, how do you reconcile everybody else bringing in a 115 horsepower boat with a 115 horsepower motor? Can you limit the amount of access? What have other places done? And that's not only within the state, but within the region itself. So would you be willing to take on doing some of that investigation?
Sure, be happy to.
That would be wonderful. And this is all stuff that we're going to have to deal with. This has to do with the safety aspects of it that were all brought up. Traffic on the lake enforcement. There's a ton of stuff that's outside of the actual development of any of these things, any of the structures that would be abutting, that we have to come to grips with. So I'd like to get that working. So if you could work on that, and that would be something that you could report back to us, just let me know if you need it on the agenda. Same thing with you, George, on anything.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody have anything else before we close this? Because we're pushing the edge here.
My only concern is that we didn't allow for public comment on docketed items.
Oh. Well,
yeah,
it's not too late. Sorry, this is on me. I missed this. We do have an agenda item 1, which is public comment on docketed items. Does anybody in the public have anything to say on docketed items only? And I am going to ask you to limit. Yeah, I am going to ask you to limit your time, simply because in 15 minutes another meeting has to take place in here.
Good evening, Steve Riley, 5 Osprey Drive. You received my letter talking about an agenda item for undocketed.
Mr. Riley, can you identify what part of the agenda you were commenting on?
I'm commenting on the letter I sent.
No, sir. This is docketed items only. Your letter is not a docketed item.
I was under the impression, sir, that previously, when I've provided a letter to the town clerk to provide to the membership in advance.
Sir, is
of
it on the
meeting,
agenda?
That
Is it
I was
on?
allowed to
Simple
talk.
question, sir. Is it on the agenda? If it is not on the agenda, you may not be up doing public comment on it. I'm sorry, those are the rules.
Point of order. I sent you a letter. I sent the membership a letter to discuss this item related to undocketed items.
Sir,
Who-
we are not on the agenda at this point in time. I'm going to ask you to sit down. We have received the letter. I gave you a response to that letter. I gave you my reasons for not including that. We are not required to by law. This is a business meeting, not an open forum. Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to sit down if you're not going to address one of the docketed items.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, can I take a motion? Oh, we got another one, sorry.
Good evening, Mark Lamoy. I'm 34 Island Drive, Coventry. I'm the president of the Johnson's Pond Civic Association. So on the docketed items relating to GZA reaching out and the RDA reaching out and having meetings with the Pawtuxet River Authority and DEM, I applaud that efforts. You make decisions based upon information and get information from all the possible sources that you can. What concerns me is that no one has had a meeting or a phone call with the Johnson's Pond Civic Association. And quite honestly, we have more information than DEM and the Pawtuxet River Authority put together. I am a Coventry Town Council appointed member of the Pawtuxet River Authority. I also serve as president of the Johnson's Pond Civic Association. And quite frankly, DEM reaches out to us for information and has throughout that whole process that has taken place the last 5 years. We have water levels, flows, we have history, we have tons and tons of information. I heard Sarah with GZA said she requested that Pawtuxet River provide a report that the Johnson's Pond Civic Association did back in 2012. Well, I can provide that report, and I will, as well as every single year. We as an association, me personally, have treated the invasive species, weeds, since I've been personally involved since probably 2012 in doing so. I have done water collection. This whole water quality report, I wasn't aware that from previous meetings, wasn't aware that was going on. I do the water quality testing. I'm responsible for that. I provide the information to URI Watershed Watch. Elizabeth Herron and I, who's the program director, work hand in hand to collect those samples, to provide the data. I'm not sure if any of the URI Watershed Watch data was in this water quality report. I look forward to seeing it on the website, as well as hopefully getting a copy of it. DEM gets a lot of their water quality from URI Watershed Watch. So I just want to make it known that we are willing and able to provide any and all information, as well as work together to provide, this much wanted and needed public access. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank
Sarah and
you.
Kevin, can we get something arranged for that?
Absolutely.
100%. I was just going to say, I think we got some flack for discussing, talking with the butters. Obviously, reached out to Mark with a questionnaire, and I just want to say to the president of the Johnson's Pond Civic Association, I'm so glad you stepped up. We will contact you immediately, and this was going to be a follow-up regardless, because we knew that you had this report. But the fact that you have been doing all this additional work, we're remiss for not reaching out earlier. We had intended to do so to kind of discuss the survey results, but obviously it's become clear to us that you've been the primary caregiver of the pond. So we got your message loud and clear, and we appreciate it.
And we can also update the water quality report based on the findings and information that is provided.
Thank you. So you have my email. Just to add, we've been around, we were incorporated with the Secretary of State in 1944. We've been around forever. And again, we have a lot of information that can be shared and is very useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, they'll contact and set up a meeting. Okay. Any other public comment on docketed items? Do we have somebody on Zoom?
Stacy Nichols, 159 Lewis Farm Road. As far as, I want to thank the JCPA president for standing up, because that was also my question. If you were looking for reports, why we didn't ask the person with the report to start with. It seems, as Brittany said, and I believe at the last town council meeting, Miss Councilwoman Capaldi said the same thing. We are going around in a circle. Meetings seem to be the same all the time. We talk about the plan. I have yet to hear what the plan is. And so how can we be making decisions or asking DEM for advice or JCPA for advice when we don't actually know what we're even making? The identified spots, those were pointed out, I want to say 9 months ago, by people in town, by residents here. So it seems either like we're dragging our feet, or we're really not utilizing town resources well. And it's kind of confusing, and I know there's a lot of people who would like to know what actually has been done. And I know GZA is here, and I've asked before for how much money we have spent thus far. Does RDA have a budget moving forwards? Because I think that's important to consider. Just financially, the town is trying to keep things in order, and what does that look like? I've never heard in a meeting what the RDA budget is. Like, I know there's money set aside in an account, but I don't know what you're planning on spending on what. And according to President Verducci, he said that there was supposed to be a second town meeting by the end of the year, and that a full report was going to be presented to town council in January. That was the last I heard from him. So I think there definitely needs to be much more communication with town council, because
Okay, Ms. Nichols, and I don't mean to interrupt, and they're valid points. I'm not quite sure what agenda item you're dealing with,
well,
but in
this
5
is
minutes,
this
excuse me,
falls under
excuse me,
next steps.
okay, excuse me,
Um,
please. Excuse me, please. In
Yes.
5 minutes, we have another meeting in here, so could you please summarize it? Okay, I don't
Okay,
mean
so
to.
that's not my fault that there's another meeting and that
Well,
there was
Respectfully,
supposed to be
sir, we
public
should have
comment
taken the
much
agenda
earlier in the
in
meeting.
order, so we need to let them
I
speak.
do realize that, but I can also limit the amount of time, and all I'm asking is to summarize at this point in time, if you would be so kind.
Yes, I'm summarizing that your next steps on your agenda, that the next steps need to also include informing town council what the next steps are, because I've asked town council and they think the next step is that you're getting a full report in January.
I'm not sure
And-
how
and
they
so
got
I-
that impression because I have not stated that.
Okay, so then I guess Ms. Capaldi and President Verducci and Councilman Hool all assumed that this was moving forward, and I guess that just goes back to what we as a public just need. Maybe you can go on the website as far as what has been done and what the timeline for next steps. Not you're building the beach or not you're applying for a permit, but like, when is that next step going to be? And what does that look like? Just more communication.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? Okay. We'll close public comment. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.